All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our Parent and Family Programs webinar. This is a part of our National Hazing Prevention Week efforts. My name is Janice McKenzie. I'm the coordinator for Fraternity and Sorority Life.
And I am Jamison Keller. I'm the Assistant Dean of Students and Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life.
So our goals for this webinar today is to bring awareness of National Hazing Prevention Week, understand what hazing is, how to have conversations with your student about hazing, and how to engage as a bystander. Our office is composed of 3 professional staff members. So as Jamison mentioned, he is the Director and Associate Dean of Fraternity and Sorority Life at Georgia Tech. Maddie Smythe is the coordinator for Fraternity and Sorority Life. And then once again, myself, I'm also a coordinator. We have 4 communities: the Interfraternity Council, which is composed of 32 chapters, the Collegiate Panhellenic Council, which has a total of 8 chapters, the Multicultural Greek Council with 6 chapters, and then the National Panhellenic Council of 8 chapters. So what is National Hazing Prevention Week? And you may be asking, why are we spending this time to have conversations with parents? Well, we recognize that parents are an important part in helping with the efforts of hazing prevention, so we wanted to share this information with you. So the purpose of the week, it was started by hazingprevention.org, and it's always the last full week of September. And this week is observed on college campuses, on high school campuses, middle schools, and just in community in general. And it is to raise awareness about hazing, the effects of hazing, signs of hazing, and to have conversations around hazing prevention. We recognize that hazing culture doesn't just start overnight, and that in order to prevent this, we must be proactive in our efforts. So this kind of goes into why is it important. Once again, hazing culture builds over time. And so we recognize that small instances of tradition can slowly turn into expectations of a hazing community. And it's not just a fraternity and sorority life issue. Even though we may be at the forefront of conversations or even at the forefront of scrutiny around hazing, it can show up in social organizations, in band and athletics, and arts groups, but we wanted to make sure we're having this conversation with you all. It is a topic within our community, and so being a part of fraternity and sorority, we must be proactive in talking to our students, with our Georgia Tech community, and the community at large. And lastly, once again, we want to be proactive and preventative. And so we don't want to say, yes, there is a hazing issue, but we recognize where hazing can start. And so this is our effort into making sure we are addressing the issues.
So one of the first things that I want to make sure that we reiterate is that the topic of hazing, many students have already experienced hazing even as early as middle school. And unfortunately, they don't recognize it as being hazing. And so by the time they come to the college campus, some of the activities that they may be asked to participate in, they wouldn't recognize right away as something that would be inappropriate. So we want to make sure that we're educating them on all of the different types of hazing. And again, Janice has said that it builds up over time. And so it's important for them to be able to identify and reflect on all of their past experiences in student organizations, athletics, to really determine if something that they experience would fall into the definition of hazing. So definition of hazing, what is it? It's hazing is conduct, whether on or off institute property, which exceeds the normal expectations of the organizational purpose or mission, and which A, endangers the mental or physical health or safety of a student as a condition of their affiliation, or which is sufficiently severe or pervasive enough to interfere with academic responsibilities. That is the definition that the Georgia Institute of Technology follows, which also matches the University System of Georgia. What I'd like to share with you with this diagram is the fact that hazing can be on a spectrum. And so we want to start with, as much as possible, being able to educate and be proactive about what hazing and hazing culture is. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to manage the process and respond to it when it already exists. So what can it look like? Activities that are meant to earn a place within the student organization, and they could be both physical and mental in nature. We'll start with the mental. This is representative more so in women's organizations, where there could be derogatory language, there could be jokes, but really there is a process of pressure that is placed on new members where they need to affiliate completely with the organization's expectations. And where that goes wrong is if those expectations are not a natural part of the values of a sorority or a fraternity. And so that could quickly become personal servitude. It could quickly become questions of whether or not they are good enough for the organization, whether they have to continue to prove over and over and over again their worth as a member and why the organization should have invited them to be a part of the group to begin with. Physically, very rare does it happen in sororities, although it can. More so it does happen in men's organizations, where there is a physical construct to the process of getting initiated. It usually will start pretty light. There might be some late nights, some sleep deprivation. There could be personal servitude again, where members may require their pledges or new members to go and get them food late at night, to other tasks or chores, cleaning up the house, which would be personal rooms, laundry, anything like that. And then it could grow over time to where they're having to remember information and being quizzed, and if they get those answers incorrect, then they may be forced to eat or act in a certain way. Hitting and paddling tends to be more on the extreme side, as well as forced alcohol consumption. So here's some good questions to ask yourself and your student to ask is if anything that they are being required to do is part of the overall educational experience. Does it promote or conform to the organization's ideals and values? Many of the organizations that I've seen that have been hazing in the past rely heavily on the fact that they are secret organizations. But what's important to note is that the values and ideals are not secret. Those are accessible to any new member on the national website in their pledge educational materials, and so that should not be a source of pressure that they are secret organizations. Increased feelings of friendship between the new initiated members. These are things that also can be used against the new members in terms of team building. A lot of times chapters will say that these hazing activities are necessary to build a stronger bond among the organization or among the pledge class. And unfortunately, what that really does is it separates one class from the other. So it actually creates separate cliques within the overall organization, then pitting the year that they pledged against another year of pledging. Does the activity include things that are just private? Are they just for new members, or are they also for initiated members as well? Do they participate together? Another question would be if the activity that's taking place would show up on the front page of the campus newspaper, on the news. Would they do those activities in front of you or any administrator or faculty member? If the answer is yes to any of those, then most likely it would be a questionable activity. So again, going back to one aspect that is really confused for students that rely on hazing to build team building, a lot of times they feel that by providing a shared experience that is tense or difficult builds stronger unity amongst the pledge activity. Unfortunately, as I've said already, it actually bridges new members and active members against each other. So if the activity is humiliating or degrading and it tears down individuals, it creates division, those are all things that I've seen quickly tear down the overall organization. On the flip side, if it's a shared positive experience, if it supports and empowers new members, if it begins to build pride and integrity, then that is something that we definitely want to see as part of the educational process. So a lot of times when we're doing education with our new members and our chapters, a lot of times they just see the worst case scenarios. And it's tough to understand the philosophy and how different aspects of their transition into college and into student organization build over time to lay a foundation for a hazing culture to be embedded within the process. So here are three aspects that separately are all great things that we all find in common just in society. First and foremost, a sense of belonging. And so we know as humans, even dating way back down to the caveman days, that if we were isolated and by ourselves, we would have a less opportunity to survive. And so within our DNA, we as humans seek to belong to groups of others that will make sure that we are protected, that we are able to survive and take care of each other. And so that carries through in any major transition for our college students where they're in a new environment, it's foreign to them, and they want to quickly get that feeling of belonging to their new home. And that means finding an organization of peers that feel that they share in the same values. Separately, this is a great process and a natural process that all students go through. On the flip side, there is the rite of passage. And the rite of passage is something that ceremonially we have often in society. That could be baptisms, that could be ceremonies at church, it could be weddings, funerals, anything like that. And a rite of passage is something that we seek to achieve because it places us in a new category of accomplishment within our group or culture. If you add those two to the third area, prestige, this is where it could quickly go south on us. And that is that we want those rites of passage to come with some level of pride and prestige, meaning that not everyone can actually accomplish what I was able to accomplish. So where a hazing culture can take root is when all of these three philosophies or processes come together and get confused in regards to what actually equals a level of prestige. So if we take advantage of students knowing that they have a deep desire to belong, and we also know that they want to accomplish a great deal of rites of passage, and they want to have a certain level of prestige there, then it quickly can become a dynamic where it could be abused. So implications of hazing, these are some examples that we're providing to you from surveys that have been done from the National Study on Student Hazing in 2008. And 55% of college students who have been hazed indicate the following: that as a result of hazing or being hazed, they feel more like a part of the group, and 69% actually reported that they did not. Did they feel a sense of accomplishment after being hazed? 78% did not say that that helped in gaining a level of accomplishment. Did they feel stronger as a result? 82% did not. And then did they do better in classes? 85% did not. Some myths about hazing. Again, this is very important to process with our students, especially if they've experienced some level of hazing without knowing it prior to coming to Georgia Tech. And one of the biggest ones that I usually hear from students is actually the last one. And that is, if someone agrees to participate in an activity, it can't be considered hazing. And this is the number one defense for organizations who have to respond to allegations. And they usually say, well, they didn't have to do it, it was their own choice. But by fact, states in upholding the law will consider this defense as something that would not be acceptable. because the social dynamic, that sense of belonging and the power with that rite of passage will cause students to make decisions that they normally wouldn't make because of that social pressure. And so in most lawsuits that have been filed, that defense of someone agreeing to participate, that they weren't forced, is usually thrown out. These other myths are also just as important. Hazing builds unity. We've already covered the fact that most students say that that does not. Since alumni and current members were hazed, then therefore this is a tradition that should be upheld. Guarantee that somewhere along the way these traditions were developed and it's believed to be long-standing, but really we can break it down to the last 2 or 3 years, and it grows over time.
So how to support your student during this process. So if they are wanting to join an organization, whether that be a fraternity or sorority, a social group, organization, band, athletics, what should your role in as a parent or guardian, family member, in helping your student navigate? So understanding the process, we have gone over a lot of signs of hazing, what hazing looks like, recognizing that the national values are often publicly listed. And so every organization is a non-hazing organization. This can be shown on their website, within their documentation, any contracts or whatnot that they may need to sign, that in the essence of it, every organization is non-hazing. So if your student says, oh, this organization says it's okay to haze, that is not the case. It is against the law in the state of Georgia. A lot of states are moving this hazing towards a felony versus a misdemeanor or a lesser offense. Read and sign non-hazing statements. So this is specific to fraternity and sorority. Within all of our organizations, they are required when initiating the membership intake process to read and sign a non-hazing statement for the organization as well as for Georgia Institute of Technology. So it's important that they actually read it, and this is just a life lesson to read anything before you sign it, so that they understand what are the implications, what is included within that, and it usually spells out everything that could be deemed as hazing, either explicitly or the essence of it. And within fraternity and sorority, again, every organization has a nationally recognized program. So this is the membership intake process, the educational period. But these are programs and outlines that are within the confines that the national headquarters has approved. Now, some organizations have leniency to say, well, we'll do part A before part B. But regardless, all these things are supposed to be within what the national organization has approved. Common signs of hazing. And so it's important as a parent and a guardian to talk to your student, to have consistent conversations. This is a big decision that they are embarking on if they want to join, specifically a fraternity or sorority. And so recognizing before they go through their intake process, if these signs are coming up that maybe they have experienced some form of hazing. So is there a change in behavior? Are they not talking to you as much? Are they more quiet? Do they seem more timid, more stressed out? Wanting to leave the org or team without explanation. Before they were so excited about this opportunity, and now all of a sudden they do not want any parts of it and they're not communicating with you. Which goes into the next one, sudden decrease in communication. If your student talks to you about everything all day, every day, but when it comes to this part of their life, they don't want to talk to you about it, that could be a sign that they may be experiencing hazing. Unexpected weight loss due to stress, due to extreme physical activity, or some other situations. But if their weight is fluctuating, either going up or going down while they're going through an intake process, that could be a sign of hazing. Change in sleep or eating habits. So if they aren't sleeping as well, if they're up in the middle of the night, if they're consistently tired, if they aren't eating proper nutrition, these could all be a sign. Increasing in secrecy and unwilling to share details. So once again, going back to communication, if your student talks to you consistently, but now all of a sudden they don't want to, and then this could be a sign. The physical and psychological exhaustion. So once again, going back to that, mental or physical portion of hazing. If they seem tired chronically, once again, these are all signs that we encourage you to look out for if your student expresses that they are wanting to join an organization, or even if they don't, but these are signs that you're starting to see. They could be signs of hazing. So how do I talk to my student about hazing? You know, we're hearing everything you're saying. This information is wonderful, but I don't want to burn that relationship I have with my student. They're excited about this opportunity, and so I'm not exactly sure how to approach this. So before they decide to join, we have 4 questions that we encourage you to ask that came from hazingprevention.org. So before, do you know what hazing is? How can you stand up or say no if it occurs? Do you know your school's policies on hazing and consequences if caught? And do you know how to report hazing? These are all good priming questions as your student is exploring their opportunity for membership. And then after joining or while joining, have you met the organization's advisor or coach? Do they approve of these activities? Advisors are a big portion of our role. We have a consistent communication relationship with our advisors. And so making sure that the student has met them and that the advisor is aware of what's happening. Is alcohol involved in any of these activities? We see that alcohol impairs judgment and motor skills and response times, and that alcohol does show up in hazing situations. So are they asking your student to consume any form of alcohol? What kinds of activities are involved in joining these organization or team? Are you comfortable with all of these? So if they're asking you to go on a 5-mile hike, are you comfortable with that? If they're asking you to buy them food, are you comfortable with these things? And is there any adult supervision and or approval of these activities? So is the national headquarters aware of what's going on? Is the advisor there? Is the coach there? Is there some supervision over the activities that are happening? And so these are all questions that you can start to engage with your student that can help them understand and maybe see if they are being hazed and help you better understand what the process they're going through. And understand that you're doing the right thing. You know, as parents and family members, we want to make sure that we are doing the right thing for our student, and we may be concerned, and our student says, oh, don't worry about it, everything's okay, but something in your gut is telling you, no, I need to call someone, I need to report this, I need to let it be known. You may not feel that you're doing the right thing at the moment, but on the other side, you could be saving a life, you could be saving a chapter, you could be teaching them a very important lesson. So please make sure that you continue to be proactive and vigilant, and that when you call us or report this, that you are doing the right thing.
So one of the other aspects that I think is really important in working with your student is empowering them to not just be a bystander, but to be an active bystander. And so a lot of situations that I've seen over time that border on hazing or cross that line usually will involve a subgroup of an organization. And so that subgroup will take it upon themselves without the rest of the organization being aware of the activities that they're doing with their new members. And so there's also relationships within the community that friends and significant others are also aware of things, or at least have an uneasy feeling that something might be going on. And so by encouraging them to be active bystanders, meaning that they will actually confront the situation, they will bring it to our attention, instead of just getting caught up in the fact that, well, I'm not part of that organization, so I'm not going to say anything, or I'm not the president, and so I have no authority here. In fact, they do. Every single member, every single new member has the authority and the obligation to report anything that they feel is inappropriate or even dangerous. And so we want them to be aware, and we want them to say something. And so they need to be able to identify whatever is happening is something that maybe is questionable. Is there something that people seem to be uncomfortable with? Is it happening in private? Are they putting newspapers up on the window so that nobody from the outside can see or question? or any of those things happening that really just create a gut feeling that something's not right? Can they identify that? And then they want to be able to share their concerns. If they feel that they can't with the leadership of their organization, they are certainly encouraged to share it with the advisors, with their national organization. They can also share it with us, the staff in the Fraternity and Sorority Life office. We also have an anonymous link that is connected to our Fraternity and Sorority Life website that they can also complete and give us as much information as possible. As they're making these decisions, they want to be able to gain supporters in that process so that they don't feel like it's just them. Many times that will be another pledge or new member. It could also be roommates or anyone outside of the organization. And we want to make sure that as they're assessing the questionable activities, that maybe it's not something that's hazing, but it still doesn't connect with the purpose of the organization. And so we would help them consider other activities that will accomplish the same thing that might not be so questionable. Reporting hazing, these are the different areas that we would encourage. First and foremost, the Division of Student Life and Dean of Students. There's a team of deans, there's 9 in total, that they could meet one-on-one in confidentiality with any of our deans by making what's called a care appointment online, and they could share that information confidentially. I've already said they can come to any of the staff within Fraternity and Sorority Life. They can, again, use that link on our website to make a report of hazing. There's also the Office of Student Integrity, and that is the process that oversees the student conduct process, code of conduct for our entire campus, and all of those staff are versed in responding to hazing allegations. There is a national hazing hotline. The number is there, and we encourage you to keep that handy. And then finally, the national organization has a very important stake in this, in making sure that their chapters all across the country are adhering to their expected standards and guidelines. And so they want to hear from you as well if there's anything that seems to be questionable. So in responding to all of this, I want to make sure that you understand that this is a preventative measure on our behalf. We want to partner with you. It's really less than 10% of student organizations all across the country that embark on hazing behaviors. And our goal here is to make sure that you are informed so that if there's anything questionable, we can take care of it and make sure that we are 100% compliant with everyone of having a productive and exciting experience for our members without the use of hazing. So one aspect of that, of course, Janice already said, is our National Hazing Prevention Week participation. This is an annual thing that we will continue. We also have what's called Greek Advance, which is an intensive leadership experience for all new chapter presidents and governing council officers. And so we go off campus and do a 2-day retreat with them, and we include a review of all of the policies and expectations and how to lead, especially in times of concern. We have Greek peer education and new member orientation. This is a mandatory process for all new member, where they learn about important topics such as alcohol abuse, sexual assault, and hazing, as well as the importance of being congruent with the values of their chapter. We have a strong relationship with headquarters staff. Most organizations have consultants that travel around the country and visit every chapter. We have a direct one-on-one relationship with them, as well as those at the national office. We have weekly meetings in partnership with the staff of the Office of Student Integrity to make sure that we're sharing information of reports and other allegations, and that we're working in tandem to respond to those first and foremost in an educational way. And finally, all of the staff in Fraternity and Sorority Life have consistent one-on-one meetings with both chapter officers and chapter presidents. That usually happens on a monthly basis, and we focus in on the goals that the organization has, the leadership practices that are being implemented to carry out those goals, and then of course brainstorming in the event that there is anything that begins to get off track within the goals that we all have.
Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to our webinar and being, being a part of our National Hazing Prevention Week efforts. We hope that you learned something. We hope that you are able to take this information back to your families, back to your students, and have conversations with them around hazing prevention. We're excited to continue to have conversations and work with our students. And so once again, thank you for spending time with us, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Janice, and thank you, Jameson, for the wonderful webinar, which goes over hazing prevention. Now we will transition into a quick Q&A session. I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Tyler Barker. I serve as the coordinator for parent and family programs here at Georgia Tech, and I'll also let Maddie introduce herself as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Maddie Smythe, and as Janice mentioned during their presentation, I serve as the coordinator for Fraternity and Sorority Life.
Thank you so much, Maddie. So the first question we have is for Mr. Jameson Keller. Can you explain, is hazing an issue at Georgia Tech? I know that's the $1 million question that most parents have, so if you can kind of expound on that, that would be great.
Yes, certainly, and it's a very important question to have. I would say that, to reiterate what I said in the webinar, about 10% of organizations unfortunately get caught up in those three aspects: prestige, sense of belonging, and rites of passage, and feel like they need to add a little bit more that's beyond the scope of what they should be doing. It's important to note that research has shown that the number one student organization that we're finding across the country that is involved in hazing actually are performing arts groups, and so marching band, choir, cheerleading, those sorts of things. Number two would be athletics, and number three on that list would be fraternities and sororities. And so despite the education, sometimes alumni influence, sometimes again a student having a need or feeling the need to add components to increase the prestige, then begins to create that snowball effect where hazing can take root. So we have had a few organizations, not many, but a few organizations that have been involved in allegations that resulted in determining that they were in violation. And those student organizations are sanctioned appropriately, including suspension from campus. First and foremost, the safety of our students is number one, and making sure that they have a good, solid, valuable experience is important to us. And that's why we're actually doing this webinar, is to partner with you to make sure that we're working together to make that happen. The student conduct process, which Maddie I think might talk about in a minute, is available online for you to follow, but what's most important I'd like to direct your attention to would be connecting on our sanctioning page, and that can be found through either our website, there's a link there, or the Office of Student Integrity, and that lists all the student organizations and the judicial aspects that they've been have been found to be in violation of, as well as the sanctions.
Thank you, Jameson. Maddie, if you can explain for a organization that is going through the allegation process, if you can explain how long is the conduct process typically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it can range. I would typically say that the range could be anywhere from a week to an entire semester, and that just depends on the allegation itself and how many students that they need to meet with as a result. So our office partners with the Office of Student Integrity to do that investigation, and those staff members will be meeting with students involved, and they'll come up with the sanctions there in partnership with us. So like I said, it could be anywhere from a week depending, or it could be an entire semester, and we do our best to make that process go as fast as possible, but we understand there's a lot of moving parts there.
If I'm a parent and I'm curious about the allegations or just things going on, details within the conduct process, am I allowed to have access to that type of information?
Good question. What's important to note is that individual student conduct and those records and processes are FERPA protected. And so individual student names can never be revealed or shared outside the context of the investigation in the institute itself. But student organization outcomes are not protected by FERPA, and that is why we post all of those outcomes for the public to see, and thus able to make better choices in regards to student organizations that they want to be a part of.
Thank you for sharing. Janice, if you don't mind talking about, if I'm a parent and I want to talk to someone, but I don't want my student to know, can I report anonymously?
Yes, so thank you for that question. So like we mentioned in the presentation, you can report anonymously if you wanted to go to 1-800-NOT-HAZE or 1-888-NOT-HAZE. That is a way that you can report. We will try to keep things as private as possible, but to be able to say everything will be anonymous as we're working with our office, with the Office of Student Integrity, the deans of students, it will be private, but we cannot say it will be completely anonymous depending on the type of hazing situation or who all needs to be looped in. But we treat all of these cases with care, and so we encourage you to still call us and still report those situations. Thank you.
Jameson, if you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit more about the liquor ban here at Georgia Tech and what that means for organizations.
Yes, our parents may have heard during Facet or from their students that fraternities in particular are going through a change in their risk management policies, which includes the removal of hard alcohol within their properties and events. And so this is something that is coming from the national industry of fraternities, all under the North American Interfraternity Conference, which is the umbrella organization working with 66 national fraternities. And collectively, they have made a decision to ban hard alcohol from the physical properties and any events, with the exception of if those events are happening at third-party vendor locations. So third-party vendor locations would include any establishment business that would actually have a liquor license or a caterer. Other than that, within the events held outside the third-party vendor locations, possibly in their house or other locations, or just every day-to-day operations within their facilities, anything less than 15% alcohol content would be permissible, but also the law applies, so that would be permissible to anyone that is 21 and over.
Thank you for sharing, Jameson. And now, Janice, I'll come back to you. If I'm a parent and I'm concerned, what can I do to help in hazing?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things that parents can do to help us in hazing. Going back to our presentation, asking those probing questions when your student is considering joining a fraternity or sorority, asking questions while they're going through the process of the membership intake of the organization, as well as afterwards. Being aware, so tuning into webinars like this, recognizing the signs of hazing, kind of looking at that dynamic of prestige and a sense of belonging, being able to have those conversations. And so we know that hazing evolves over time, and it is a snowball effect. So being able to catch these situations at the beginning, and so being proactive in that sense, is a large help to us and will continue to help us in hazing.
Thank you so much. Maddie, I'll come to you next. How do you respond to the notion if someone says, I went through a pledge process and it made me a better person?
Yeah, so I would say that may be one opinion, but the research shows that an overwhelming amount of students have responded that no, hazing does not actually help their sense of belonging to an organization. Hazing does not make them feel better connected or have a better allegiance. And so, as Jameson mentioned in the presentation, there are other ways to build team and build that pride in an organization that doesn't involve hazing.
Thank you so much. Jameson, I'll come to you next. What do you think has changed since the times maybe 20 to 30 years ago when actual parents and families were in college as well?
Well, a couple things I would say. Number one, hazing, alcohol abuse, all of those things are an fortunate part of our history as fraternities and sororities, but what has definitely changed is the publicity of those situations as well as the response. And so society, all of us as educators, the national organizations, no longer tolerate inappropriate and illegal behavior because it's ultimately dangerous. And over the last 5 to 10 years, we have seen the devastating results. And so the response is immediate. The response is to ensure that the safety of our members and our chapters are of utmost important. And the liability that's coming through and the changes in hazing laws are being upgraded to change from misdemeanor to felony. And so there's a lot more at stake now for our students than ever before. You know, they have worked hard to come to the Institute, and the value of their degree is extreme. And the last that they want to experience would be a felony on their record. And so we want to make sure that just because something is considered a tradition that happened 20 years ago, that we correct and change the idea and nature of why that tradition has to continue to exist. And we want to work with our students to make sure that we can replace whatever they think is positive with things that are actually appropriate.
Thank you for sharing. So just based upon what you're telling me, and I'll give this question to you, Maddie, it sounds like it's not just a problem within the Greek system. If you could just talk more about that.
Yeah, and so hazing can happen in any student organization and oftentimes in high school or middle school, but typically hazing nationally can occur in an arts group, so that would be a show choir or a band or anything of that nature, theater. It can happen in athletics as well, and any group of students that are on a team together and share a common goal.
Thank you. And to close out with the last question, Jameson, I think the $1 million question is, what is the future of Greek life as we look towards the future?
I think that's a good question, and I would say that the entire fraternity and sorority industry and within higher education is asking themselves that very same question. And personally, I feel, as someone who has 23 years of experience working with fraternities and sororities, that they are needed now more than ever before. What the fraternity and sorority experience can produce is basically ethical leaders for society. The social skills, the leadership development, the confidence that is developed within our chapters and within those experiences cannot be compared to many other organizations out there. And so the network and the opportunity for continued development well beyond college is an extreme value to the return on the investment that they make as an undergraduate. We've done this webinar not to scare you or overly concern you, but we did feel that because we feel it's so important to have this experience on our campus and for your students, our students, that we want to equip you with a little more information to assist us in the event that it is needed. So we're proud of our community, we're proud of our students, and we're excited about the fact that they are part of the fraternity and sorority experience, and we want to make sure that we continue to support them, to empower them to use everything that their experience will give them to improve themselves.
Thank you so much. I would just like to thank each of you for sharing your thoughts and knowledge as we were talking about hazing and Hazing Prevention Week. And this will conclude our webinar series, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you.